Welcome to this podcast in a series developed by the Nebraska Juvenile Justice Association. NJJA is a 501c3 not-for-profit public benefit association. The mission of NJJA is to improve services to youth in the juvenile justice system by serving as a resource for collaboration, leadership development, and education for juvenile justice system professionals and interested stakeholders. Our efforts are greatly enhanced with the generous support of the Sherwood Foundation. Please visit our website at njja.org to see a list of upcoming podcasts, as well as the opportunity to revisit those podcasts previously recorded. We welcome your thoughts as to potential podcast topics and interest. Welcome to the Juvenile Justice in Nebraska podcast, produced by the Nebraska Juvenile Justice Association. All right, let's get going here.
Okay. Episode 6
of the NJJA podcast. First and foremost, I've always got to thank the Sherwood Foundation for making this possible. The Sherwood Foundation has been great for NJJA, great to NJJA, for allowing us to do these podcasts and a number of other activities. So thank you to the Sherwood Foundation. Today, we have two very special guests here with us today. We have Deb VanDyke Ries, who is the director of the Court Improvement Project, and we have Miss Lakeisha Phelps. Lakeisha, you are the youth advocate?
Yes.
With Nebraska Family Support Project?
Yes.
Awesome. First of all, thank you guys both for coming in. I'm excited about this. And Deb, I've always been a big fan of yours and the work that you do at the Court Improvement Project. And Lakeisha, I'm super excited to get to know you and learn more about your story.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
First and foremost, just because of the hot topic of the climate we're in, I got to ask about COVID. I've got to start there. How has it affected the Court Improvement Project first, and then we'll turn it over to Lakeisha. What has it changed for you guys?
Well, the courts have continued to remain open, and so a lot of the hearings that are being held within juvenile court and then all courts across the state have really moved to a virtual setting. And there have been some challenges that have happened, in making sure that families and individuals that need to have access to the courts are able to have that access to the courts. I think the silver lining is that I think there's always been the desire to move the courts to a more virtual setting or having that capability. Sure. And some of our courts across the state, especially in rural areas, have really kind of embraced that using technology because of the sheer distance that people have to travel. And then other courts were slower to embrace that, and that has kind of jump-started a lot of the courts to be able to do that. I think for the Court Improvement Project, we really spend a lot of our time going out to communities and meeting with our Through the Eyes of the Child teams. And because of COVID, we really we've had to limit our travel. We haven't had that, kind of face-to-face work that we're typical, it's typical for us. And so we've had to get creative about how we continue to remain connected with our teams across the state during this time.
I've had the honor and privilege to travel out to some of those rural courthouses, and when they say rural, they mean rural. So I can't imagine how beneficial technology would be for some of those families, because some of those are so remote that it's tough to get there.
Right.
You got to block out an hour, 2 hours sometimes to drive.
Exactly.
So that makes sense. I think this whole COVID thing is going to change a lot of the way we do business. I know here at Cedars we've had to make a lot of modifications in how we're providing services to young people, and those virtual platforms have become huge for us. Because not only you got to worry about the safety of the kids and families, but then you got to worry about the safety of your staff as well.
Right.
Lakeisha, how has it affected your job at the Nebraska Family Support Network?
We, of course, had to modify a lot of ways we interact with the youth. And being that I interact directly with you, I'm noticing a lot of youth are getting tired of the virtual. We're going into 3 months, and they're exhausted from it. They know the school's coming up and it'll be virtually online, and they're like pulling away from doing therapy on Zoom or, the youth groups, and they're finding more things to do outside in society. With everything's being closed, I see it striking more behavior issues and depression. And so I try to be as creative as I can with the activities, are keeping their attention and keeping the programming going. Let them know that we have to continue to work on ourselves regardless of what goes on in society. We have to keep our goals activated. We have to keep working on ourselves, stay in therapy, stay doing drug and alcohol classes online, like continue to work on yourself. So it's hard, that part. As far as the agency, I know we're all coming together trying to support our sister agencies and really collaborating. It's helping us put our minds together to serve our families and youth better in the community.
Yeah. And we're going to get into Lakeisha's story here in a minute. It's an amazing how far you've come and what you've been through. I was able to watch the video, the YouTube video, which we'll put a plug out here in a little bit for that video. But wow, it was really, really neat to see and clearly the impact that you're having on some of these kids. But we'll get to that here in just a second. Deb, how do you know Lakeisha? Where did this relationship start?
So I got to know, first of all, I saw Lakeisha speak at a presentation at Boys Town that I believe is the American Bar Association pulled together a couple of years ago. And she was the moderator of the youth panel.
Yes.
And it was so impressive, to first of all hear your story, hear Lakeisha's story, but then also just to see the connection that she had with the young people that were on the panel, to be able to kind of facilitate that in front of a group of people, I think is a skill and a gift that I think that she has. But then also just to see how she was able to really, tease out additional information from the young people and really be able to kind of dig deeper on what it is that they were trying to say. And so that was how I first saw her. And this was just prior to our children's summit. And so every 3 years, the Court Improvement Project brings together stakeholders from across the state to do a multiple day conference where we talk about all different kinds of topics related to child welfare and youth justice. But the thing that I love about our Children's Summit is that we regularly really honor and highlight both our Through the Eyes of the Child teams, a judge, and then also an individual or a family that has shown resilience. And so Lakeisha was nominated by Margaret Vosick from Boys Town for that award, and then she received that award. And so it's just been through those experiences that I have gotten to know Lakeisha. We've talked on the phone a few times. We've done email things, but every time I hear her speak, I am constantly in awe of the work that she continues to do, the passion that she has for the kids and the youth that she is working with on a daily basis.
Yeah, sure. So, Lakeisha, what does an award like that mean to you? The Children's Summit honored you with this award. What is that like?
It means it's so personal to me. It lets me know. I remember going through the system and being in so many placements and not really knowing what my future looked like. And it just means that everything I went through and everything I strive for and continue to work on within myself and working with these youth and healing myself as I work with them is all paying off. And it lets me know that when I went through the system, I wasn't for sure if it was anyone out there really caring about what youth who was in foster care or any group home or placement cares, or, if they're thinking about us or working towards change or working towards better services for us. And to know that it's people out there that's listening to my story and that cares and is out there really working for it, it means a lot to me. And I'm able to go back and tell you, like, it don't matter where we come from. Look at now, you know, like, I'm here now. I went through everything you went through and some, and I'm here now. And it's people that's taking my story, embracing it, and make it change so that your path could be easier to walk on.
So you keep mentioning your story, and that's what I really want to learn about today is Lakeisha Phelps' story, because that's one of the things I want to get out there with this podcast is overcoming that adversity and that perseverance that you have clearly shown. Can we get into that a little bit? You want to kind of talk a little bit about, you know, the things that you went through. You can start from wherever you want to start, whatever you're comfortable with. It'd be great. We'd love to hear it.
Okay. Well, I am the middle child of 5 siblings. My mom had 5 daughters, 5 girls.
Ooh, wow.
When I was all girls. When I was at the age of 10, we were removed from our mother home due to our house getting raided for drug selling of my stepfather. We were split up while they were incarcerated. And my sisters, we all have different fathers, so they all went with their fathers and wives. I was the only one that ended up in foster care due to my father not being present and no one being able to physically get me, I believe. So I entered foster care at the age of 10. I took it really, really hard. Within about 6 months, a few months of being in foster care, I was entered to the juvenile justice system. I was in the 5th grade at Fontenelle Elementary, and I threatened my assistant principal. She was making being rude to me about my coat being dirty. I was going through a lot. 11, I was just saying crazy things, and that entered me into the juvenile justice system. I remember shortly after that, my mom was released from jail, and she came, and I was placed back with her. However, 2 weeks later, my stepdad was murdered. So my mom just went on a depression. I don't know what for sure what happened, but I remember being back in the system. Foster care was really hard for me. One of my first foster homes, I was abused sexually. I got pregnant by the foster parent, and I had a child at 14. I ran from the day of the abuse, but I had a history of running because I didn't do good in foster homes. It just wasn't a thing for me, so I would run away. I remember running a lot. Not sure where I would run to, a lot of times to my grandma, but I would run, and I remember I ran from the group home, and I was placed in Geneva. It was my first time in Geneva, which was a really good placement for me because I not only was I running from abuse, but I was running from myself. I was diagnosed during that time with bipolar disorder, bipolar hypomania, and a personality disorder. So I was battling with my feelings, my emotions, learning about my disorders, not wanting to accept it because in the community I come from, any mental health is considered bad or you're crazy. You got so much stigma around it. So I was ashamed. So I didn't want to accept it. I was in Geneva, and I found out I was pregnant there. And that's really where my roller coaster started. I had to, of course, have the child and go through the process of the DNA test and the trial and stuff for the my offender. And it took a really good toll on me, and it made me into a dark person. And after that, I really didn't trust. After the trial and things and the DNA, I was able to give the kid up for adoption. I really didn't trust any homes. I didn't trust. At this point, I had limited contact with my siblings and my parents, and I was probably on my after I left Geneva, I was on my 17th placement due to running. I remember being in foster homes for 7 minutes one time, and I would leave. I just didn't trust foster homes, but every time I went to a group home, I would do really good in there. And Judge Johnson, he was an awesome judge. He was my judge at the time. And
who was that?
Judge Johnson.
Okay.
He was just so great. I remember he used to talk to me, and that was one of the things that people didn't do when I was system involved. I didn't have any parents, so all these people that was making decisions or at court talking for me, I really didn't understand what was going on. It was a few people that would talk and explain to me. I went through a child adoption. I went through many of trials. I went through many of court hearings for child welfare as well as for juvenile justice with lack of parents, lack of support. There other than the people that the state provided, and I knew very much of what was going on. Like on my adoption, when I gave the kid up for adoption, the creed and the visitation, all that, I wasn't aware of that until I aged out and went back and looked and kind of figured out, try to put my pieces together. But I became a very dark person after the abuse, and I didn't trust anything, and I would run away, and I would be put in so many group homes. I was in 88 placements. I was in different states.
You just say 88?
Yes, I was, and that's with foster homes, group homes, mental health facilities. I would run, and I was a runner, and I would encounter other youth who would run, and we would be running from the same thing, but into the different paths. And so I had the tool for me to be able to stay out of certain things and to continue to work on myself and have hope and have faith. I've seen so many youth that I would run away with that would go into drugs or selling their bodies or, just different things. And I just will pray and like, I don't want to, be on that path. And I made bad decisions still on that path while trying to stay away from certain things. So it wasn't an easy path at all. However, in the system, I met good people, and I would stay in contact. Those people would stay in contact with me, and I would stay in contact with them. No matter, I would run away, and I had my therapist. I would always call her. Even if I didn't tell her where I was at, I would call her. And it was just those people who kept me like having hope that things would get better. I remember when I was 19, I was 18, and I got in some really, really bad trouble, and the judge ordered me to do therapy in a woman's trauma class. And by this time, I was close to aging out. I was like 2 months from aging out. I was already in a lot of placements. I was over things. I had seen so much, got in trouble, met some people, some good people, bad people. Like, it was time for me to do a change. So the judge ordered me to do this class, and I was like, I don't want to do it. Like, it sucked. Like, But if this is going to keep me from going to jail for a long time, I'm going to do it. And I went and did a class, and it was 6 weeks. It was so dope. And I took it again 6 weeks after that because it was so dope.
On your own accord?
Yes.
Really? Good for you.
The first day in class, they gave us this candle, and I even do this activity now on my first day of certain groups that I facilitate. They gave us this candle, and the lady said that more than likely you're going to wake up in the middle of the night with a flashback or thoughts or anything like this candle, and do what you usually take to calm down, whether it's meditate, pray, or whatever, to take you to calm down. So I'm like, oh yeah, right. Like, I'm gonna sleep good. Like, let's get this over with. And in that class, like, I was so shocked at myself because I opened up. It was so many women that opened up. Our stories was alike. And it was just like so much. I just find myself opening up about things I never opened up before about. And that was one thing, part of the system. I blamed the system, like, oh, they put me in a foster home, or I sat in the youth center for 6 months after being sexually abused, and no one came and asked me why I ran or what was the reason of running. And so I sat there for 6 months and with no treatment or no nothing. Nobody cares when I wasn't open about it. I never told my judge that I ran from foster home. When he asked me why I do good in group homes but not in foster homes, I never was open and said I run because I was sexually abused and I'm scared, or I was mistreated and I'm scared. I don't feel loved, and I feel love in group homes because I know it's more than one staff. I know the lights don't come off at night. I know, like, it's protocols and it's be witnesses, other youth. So, for me to be able to open up, it triggers something, like, and it feels so relief. Like, oh, I can't believe I shared that. So that helped me. So I took the class again, and that night I had to light the candle, of course. I woke up with just things on my mind, and it just felt so good. So then I started working on myself, and that's where my life changed. Like, I was like, okay, I held on to being a victim so long, like, oh, this happened to me, so I'm able to hurt people, or I could fight to get it all out. Well, it didn't help nothing. So that class helped me realize, like, I'm not a victim. I mean, I'm a victim, but I'm not a victim. I don't have to live as a victim. I can, I'm just giving the people who perpetrated against me the power of watching me crumble, and I didn't want to crumble anymore. So I just wanted to work on myself. And I kept in contact with this. Oh, it was probably my 20th caseworker at the time, and she was the first person to be able to get into me, and she got into me because I was at Christmas, third time in Geneva, in 2017, and she people was having visits and stuff, and she come with her kid, and she bring me Christmas gifts. And I was so mean to her, and I was so horrible, but that like was really like, wow, Karen. And in the car, she had wrote some really emotional things to me in the car, and it really got to me. And that's how I was able to start opening up to her. So I had her my last 2 years in the system, and we stayed in contact after. And she's the one who introduced me to my position I am in now. We was on a random lunch, and she's like, hey, the agency that you used to have a worker from, do you remember Latanya? I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, her agency is hiring, and I think you would be really good for the position. And I'm like, oh, but I got a couple of adult charges when I was a youth or whatever, like, and I'm working on that. Like, do you think that would affect me? And she was like, I don't know, we could just apply. And at the time I was working at Coca-Cola, just had a baby. I was in school finishing up my associate's degree. So I'm like, oh,